Far too often we see those around us struggling with addiction. And I'm not even talking about drug addiction. I'm not focusing on methamphetamines or heroin, nothing like that. But I find far too often that when people mention addiction, that's the first thing to come up. That is, I feel like, where most minds go. But what is addiction, really? You can have an addiction to just about anything. You can have an addiction to caffeine. You can have an addiction to the internet, to social media, to your phone. You can have an addiction to nicotine. You can have an addiction to soda. You can have an addiction to a person, to a certain feeling. So, how do we get over the addiction? Welcome to the Radiant Sun. My name is Kendra. I'm a spiritual life coach, and I help my clients get through the blocks in their lives to get to their ultimate success. And diving into addiction, and I feel that it's not a huge topic that is talked about a lot because, again, you mention addiction and the first place your mind goes is to drugs and alcohol. And a lot of people are very quick to dismiss the idea of maybe they have an addiction. Because, again, addiction can be anything. But what is an addiction? Maybe after seeing this video, you start to wonder that, maybe my fascination in shopping is an addiction. Maybe my constant need to eat something is an addiction. It's so easy to form one, and why does it form in the first place? How do we get rid of it? And it's not easy when you're not treating it right, because you're not treating the addiction. Because what is the problem? Is it eating? Is eating too much the problem, or is it what you're trying to suppress? The problem is eating the solution that you have found, although it may affect you in a negative manner. It is in some sort of way your solution. So what is the true problem? What is it that you're trying to suppress and hide from yourself? What is it that you have been hiding from for so long? Is it not feeling worthy enough? Is it not feeling like you belong where you are? Is it knowing that you have depression, but trying to tell yourself that you don't? Trying to just do other things because, hey, that makes you happy, and then you're not depressed anymore. But then that becomes an addiction. Then you start seeing your life spiral still. But what was the initial problem? It was the depression. It wasn't your continuous eating or the continuous watching of TikToks on your phone. That was your solution. So if you're going to try to fix something, don't start with the solution. Don't try to dissect that and find the problem in that, because the problem is what you're hiding from. And I did have my history with drug use, with drinking alcohol, and it got to a point where I had to look myself in the mirror and admit that the person I was looking at was not me anymore. And I realized that the problem wasn't the crutch that I had formed. It was the fact that I was hiding what was bothering me. I was shutting down. I wasn't talking. And once I was able to see the bigger issue, I was able to tend to it with more care. Once I shifted my mindset from, oh man, I think this is turning into a problem. Where did I go wrong? Why did I end up like this? Like, wow. What did I do? Once I pulled myself out of that and saw all of the pain that I was suppressing, that I had lived through years prior, problems that ended up becoming more of a pattern in my life, because the more I suppressed it, the more it kind of bubbled up to the top in certain situations, and it kind of kept those same situations coming back into my life, because it was trying to make me look at it. It was trying to make me realize, like, okay, this is the problem here, and this is what I need to fix. So once I shifted my perspective from the fact that alcohol was the problem and realized that these suppressed traumatic experiences was the problem, it changed everything. Because then I realized that all the alcohol was just a way to escape it. So if you tend to the problem you're experiencing and you process it and you start working your way through that, then there won't be anything to hide from. There won't be anything to suppress. There won't be anything to cover up and numb. There won't be a need for the alcohol use, for the drug use, for the constant eating, for the mind-numbing scrolling on your phone. It's the looking at everything you don't want to look at because it caused so much pain before. How can it be a good thing now? If you don't look at it and you don't process it, it will form into unhealthy habits. And it will continue destroying you from the outside in. Really. The outside in, the inside out, everything. It just destroys you. Don't hide anymore. Because I know you know who you are. Because that you is still there. Because you can think back to when you were little, to when things were okay, things were fun, things were easy, things were just sunshine and rainbows, and you'd go outside and you'd run and play and get dirty, and you'd come in at dusk and eat a nice meal and get cozy in a nice warm bed. You didn't have to work hard for anything. You had all the love you could get. And I mean, maybe that's your traumatic experience. So, I mean, I'm just kind of giving an example that is generally experienced. But, you know, maybe that's your traumatic experience. But if you think back to a time where you were truly happy, when you didn't have a care in the world and you were able to just be yourself, be authentic, and feel so much love pouring into your life, that's when you felt the most at home. That's when you felt that you were doing something right. Think back to that. Reignite the bond you had with that version of you and bring that you back into the present day. Because that's still there, but all of the coping mechanisms that we have created, everything that we have been using as a crutch, it's been making us forget who we are. And I'm happy to say that the drug and alcohol use is definitely a thing of the past, but now I see that over the years, even though I haven't touched them for several years, I turned to social media, electronics, binge watching the same show over and over and over and over again, because that eased my anxiety, because I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was going to happen in that show, so I didn't watch anything new. I didn't do anything new. I stayed in my comfort zone. And it felt good at first, you know. I cut the ties from something toxic that I was bringing into my life. And I was starting to process things, but then I realized that even though I had quit one thing, I started up another. So what else was I hiding from? There's got to be something more. And I thought I had processed a good chunk of it, which I believe I did at that time, but just pieces would still float into my life, and it was like almost identical, the situations that were happening. I'm like, okay, What is it? And that's when I realized that along with healing comes the creation of boundaries. The boundaries will ensure that that traumatic experience does not happen again. The boundaries help you stay in your energy, to be who you want to be, not who others want you to be or need you to be. Boundaries can be one of the hardest things to create. But once you do, it's like you're a totally different person living a totally different life because you started saying no to things that don't benefit you. So now when I go out, and I'm sure there are other areas that does this, but for example, trick-or-treating. When you walk around with the kids, there are kids treats and there are adult treats sometimes. And growth is seeing yourself walk by those coolers for adults and not even looking at it. Not taking the pudding shot or the nip. It's not caring for it because you don't need that crutch anymore. You set a boundary with it. And you've been healing and processing everything that you went through. Everything that made you feel like you needed that in your life to begin with. And now you see that you worked your ass off to get through that addiction. And you're on the other side. Why would you want to go back? You don't have a reason for it. You don't have a need for it anymore. And I'm not going to lie. It can be extremely easy to have just one. What's just one going to do? It's going to open the door. So I actually heard that for a recovering alcoholic, and I'm not even saying that I don't even know if I would qualify as a functioning alcoholic. I just got to a point where I realized that it was more than what was needed. It wasn't per se a problem to the people surrounding me or my job or anything like that, but it was more of something that I would notice. I like waking up the next day feeling like crap. That's something that showed me like, hey, this isn't right. Like, you're not supposed to feel like this. Like, this is a problem. This solution is not a good solution. So it's like, why would you want to go back to feeling that? You realized what the issue was. And there was something that I heard that for alcoholics or anyone really quitting, I mean, this was specifically focused on alcoholics, but I feel like this would kind of go for anybody that's drinking. After stopping, and if you intend to stop for long term, it takes about 20 weeks for your brain to start functioning normally. You're still not you. In between day 1 and day, what would that be? 140-ish? You're still not you. So if you're trying to quit drinking and you're on day 20, don't even look at week 20. But just give yourself that recognition that you made it to day 20. Give yourself some slack, knowing that week 20 is still 120 days away. And it's okay for it to be hard, to feel some resistance. It's normal. And if you do slip up, but you go back into it, that takes strength. So don't be hard on yourself. And I don't know the amount of weeks for anything else, but just thinking about alcohol alone, that's so common nowadays. It's so common. So I'm just using that as a good rule of thumb for if you're trying to quit anything. It takes a long time because developing that addiction makes a lasting impression on your body, on your mind, on your heart and soul. It changes you as a person. And it took a little bit of time for you to change into that person, right? I mean, you didn't just have your first beer and then all of a sudden you were an alcoholic. It didn't happen like that. It took time to get to that point. So likewise, when you're quitting, it's going to take time to get back to the person that you truly are. So don't be so hard on yourself. And if this doesn't even pertain personally to you, like if you're not the one going through this, but maybe you know somebody that is, just have some patience with them. And the only thing that they really need from you is for you to hold space for them to grow, for them to make these changes with feeling like they're in a safe space, so they can feel like they still have the support and the love. They don't need you to tell them where they're going wrong, because even though you can see the issue in someone's life, it's not going to allow them to see it. They need to figure that out on their own. If you were to come right out and tell them, they would most likely get defensive. So it's definitely a personal journey, and you need to make the discovery on your own. You need to find the root of the problem on your own, and you have to be willing to change on your own. It's the only way it's really going to change your whole life. It's the only way it's going to stick. You can walk somebody through the motions of doing something, but if they're not in it to win it, that's not going to happen. So, again, it is so much more common than people think it is. It is not just heroin and meth and crack or something. It's not just that. It's not just alcohol. It's not just nicotine. It is so much more. It might be coffee. Anything that affects how your brain and body works is considered a drug. And yes, I did learn that from DARE class in sixth grade, 7th grade, and I won first place on the essay contest. But, you know, just trying to make light of the topic. But on a real note, it is super common. You're not alone. You're not an outcast. I mean, I definitely feel like the black sheep of the family, and in my opinion, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I'm fitting my own mold. I'm doing what makes me happy. So it's okay to feel like that, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Everyone is going through a struggle. Everyone is trying to suppress something, whether that be with something obvious or something that they also hide. No matter what it is, trust that you are doing absolutely amazing. You totally got this. And if this helped you at all, please be sure to like and subscribe, and maybe share it to a friend if you think it'll benefit them as well. And I hope to see you in the next video. Peace out.